Visit with a good manner again before we take the odds and ends of government.
Yo, today is September 14th, 2022. Welcome to Simply Bitcoin. We're your number one source for the peaceful Bitcoin revolution. We cover the breaking news, culture, mimetic warfare. We will show you why only Bitcoin can give you true financial sovereignty. And when we say that, we mean freedom. Today, we're going to debunk all the propaganda hit pieces by the legacy media. And who better to do that with than these two legends? How you guys doing?
Hello!
Hello!
Salvador! Land of the free, home of the Bitcoin, as Max always says.
True.
Happy to have you guys on the show. And of course, my legendary co-host, the Optimus Fields. How you doing, bro?
I am doing good, Nico. Hello, Max and Stacy. Honored for you guys to be here. I'm excited for this show. And you already know where my daily culture segment's going to be on. It's going to be on Bitcoin expanding the human consciousness. So it's going to be an epic, epic day, Nico. Let's do your thing, bro. Do your thing.
All right, everybody, let's start the show. Let's do this.
Number time.
Brought to you by NODL. At this point, you should be running your own Bitcoin node. If you don't use your own Bitcoin node, you're trusting someone else's. Run your own version of Bitcoin Core, the Lightning Network, Whirlpool, and Dojo, all from the comfort of your own home. And if you're a digital nomad, you have absolutely no excuse because now you can run a NODL through a virtual private server. Visit nodl.eu today. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is 20,205 sats per dollar, also known as Moscow time, 4,949 sats. Block height, 754,082. Reachable Bitcoin nodes, 15,118. Blocks to the halvening, 85,118. Halving estimate April 22nd, 2024. Total Lightning Network capacity, 4,771 Bitcoin. Estimated 96 million US dollars. Realized monetary inflation. Bitcoin taking the dollar to absolute school, 1.78%. Market capitalization, $386 billion. Now, I want to talk about something that Max said pretty long time ago, but it stuck by me. And now that I've seen it, I can't forget it, right? And it's something along the lines of the excuses themselves are suffering from inflation. And I think I have an example of that, and then I want to get your guys' thoughts. This was Joe Biden yesterday celebrating the Inflation Reduction Act. Let's check out the video.
Okay, you're listening there to President Biden at the White House. He's celebrating the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. He says that he's been fighting Big Pharma for decades. But there is this unfortunate split screen right now with the Dow taking a total beating, down more than 1,200 points. And so it feels like it's hard to be celebratory for some people in the crowd.
So, Max and Stacy, is that an example of what you guys meant? I think you guys said that originally on the Keiser report.
Well, yeah, what I was saying was that once the inflation starts to become a problem that's not going away, that's not transitory, that the excuses made by government and policymakers will get more and more outlandish, more convoluted, more bizarre. And so that's what we're seeing now, is this really, really odd, strange attempt to say that the inflation is somehow not completely out of control. And so this is predictable. This happens, this is historically what happens.
Stacy, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we're here in El Salvador, where it is home of the Bitcoin and it is Bitcoin country. So to me, looking outside the fuzzy world of fiat fraud, it is just all fraud, and it's kind of ridiculous to look at. Tomorrow here in El Salvador, September 15th, is Independence Day, and President Bukele calls it, a day to celebrate true liberty. We have true liberty because, of course, Bitcoin has delivered true sovereignty, but also because President Bukele has decided to rule as an enlightened ruler, as the Enlightenment ideals of, that Bastiat wrote so well about in the law, where, the most legitimate form of government is the one that protects life, liberty, and property. And that is what he has been doing over the past few months, especially. And so, we're here where there's true liberty, and in a system of true liberty, you have true honesty and true price discovery and true money. So, for me sitting here, I just, I look at their obfuscation and deception of the fiat fraud in the United States. They are obviously the king of the fiat fraud because they do have the dollar. So it's just kind of ridiculous to me.
Absolutely. So, Max, where do you see this? Where do you see this going? Because I think it's getting to the point where, even CNN, which, I'm not going to say anything about that, but even CNN is saying, hey, this is kind of weird that you're celebrating while, the stock market is tanking due to the recent CPI report. Where does this go? Eventually, people are just going to not believe their lies anymore.
Well, for the past 10 years, there's been the so-called widowmaker trade, where people were trying to sell the bond market or short the bond market because of the inflation that was building. But that was a widowmaker trade. It wasn't working for 10 years, really 15 years, because the Federal Reserve changed their mandate. They became the activist Fed, and so they became the buyer of first order for all the junk in the system, and they bloated their balance sheet. And this was always so they deferred the day of reckoning. So we've had now, instead of a normal business cycle in America, which would happen every generation, we've now had 2 generations or 2.5 generations without a correction or a recession to purge the malinvestment out of the system. And so that made the system incredibly fragile. And now that we're at that day of reckoning, it's going to be devastating. So the tools that the central bank has at their disposal are very blunt objects, and there's no room for nuance, really. There's only 2 possible outcomes. Either they keep raising rates and crash the entire economy worse than we saw in the Depression of the 1930s, or they're going to reverse course and engage in another round of money printing, and that would imply hyperinflation. Even Jack Dorsey saw the hyperinflation writing on the wall 6 months ago. Michael Saylor eloquently described what's happening as the melting ice cube, right? A lot of smart people have been warning about this for a while. I think that what we can say is that at some point the Fed will choke and they'll go back to massive money printing, and then the inflation will get really nasty. So then that's when you have, that's when you have gas at $10 a gallon. That's when you have food doubling and tripling again in price. That's when you have housing taking another huge leap higher. And so that's going to be the end of the post-war period of what some would call the American empire. So it lasted from 1940s to 2022, 2023. That was the American empire. That was the period. So that's it.
It's as an American, it's bittersweet. I'm just happy I'm in Bitcoin. Stacy, where do you see this happening in slow motion? How is it looking at it from a country that has already taken the next step?
Well, here it's all hope and optimism and liberation. When I walked in to places like Ilopango, Soyapango, Apopa in particular, these are places that were occupied by violent thugs for the past 30 years, sent from the United States, from the prisons of California. They've been liberated from those thugs. They've also been emancipated from the US dollar system through Bitcoin. Their leader is obviously a Lorenzo de Medici of our day. There's Renaissance 2.0. There's Enlightenment 2.0. What's not to feel good about, right? When you look from here to the United States, and we return to the United States, quite often for visits. And but it doesn't take far to look to see the entropy setting in, the I just saw a chart of the parabolic surge in the number of people in our legislative branch of the United States who are over 70. So, these guys have set in motion the decline in this of our empire with the introduction of 50 years ago, the US dollar is all fiat. And thus all the stuff that followed through, the hollowing out of the US economy that was necessary in order to maintain their power for a temporary 50-year period. And you see despair. You see homeless camps across California, which is like one of the largest economies in the world, allegedly. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see the difference between the two. Anybody who comes here to El Salvador, we just had our friend, the guy who has edited all our content for the past 15 years. He and his family came from the United Kingdom here. And of course, they Googled it. And even though they know us, it's hard to overlook the headlines from the BBC, from the Guardian, from the Wall Street Journal, from the New York Times, from the Washington Post, from the New Yorker. All of these mainstream authoritative media that the likes of Twitter will use as authorities on what is truth. Well, their truth that they tell people is that don't go to El Salvador. It's dangerous, it's violent, and it's a place of despair. Well, as soon as anybody arrives, and this happened to me and Max, of course, when we first arrived, is like they see the reality is completely different from the headlines and the truth that they say, that they try to push. It's a fake narrative that they push about what El Salvador is.
Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. We're actually going to go through some of those headlines in a little bit during the news. But yeah, to put it simply, America, I don't see a future where El Salvador, I see a very, very bright future. And holy cow, is that a complete change up from the last 100 years, right? And I think
200 years.
200 years. There we go. Wow. Anyways, guys, thank you for blowing my mind like always. Let's get to the news.
The Daily News.
Brought to you by CryptoCloaks.com. They make the best 3D printed Bitcoin merch in the game. From custom node cases to key rings to the famous 3D printed Bitcoin grenade toy. Comes in any custom color your heart desires. You want it in gold, they make it in gold, but only on CryptoCloaks.com. All right, so Stacy was talking about this a little bit earlier. These are some of the headlines, and I want to know why. And I'll pass it on to Stacy first and then Max. First headline for audio listeners on Twitter Spaces. This is by Rolling Stone. Will this be the first crypto bankrupted by, sorry, I completely butchered that. Will this be the first country bankrupted by crypto? Next one by The Telegraph. El Salvador forced its citizens to use Bitcoin. Here's what happened. Next one by The Telegraph. The world should fear El Salvador's bizarre Bitcoin experiment. Los Angeles Times. As El Salvador adopts Bitcoin, its youngest president is dismantling democracy. Behold, the Bitcoin city, El Salvador's millennial dictator, reveals plans for futuristic metropolis. Even the financial publications, Financial Times, letter, El Salvador's Bitcoin project brings no tangible benefits. Even Bloomberg, El Salvador had a Bitcoin revolution. Hardly anybody showed up. So Max, why are they doing this? I meant Stacy. Why are they doing this, Stacy?
Because El Salvador is winning, and that means they're losing. So
who's they? Sorry to interrupt you. Who's they?
Whoever presides over the current legacy system, the status quo that has been winning for the past 50 years, the cantillionaires, the crooks, the colonialists, the colonizers, the communists that run the global, fiat fraud. They're losing because El Salvador is winning. This is a sign of the end of that boomer sort of elite cantillionaire class. It's over, and they hate to see somebody who is a Lorenzo de Medici, because when he brings in Renaissance 2.0, when El Salvador becomes Florence 2.0, that only means that they've lost. Because if there's a better example, people are going to flock to this, just like what happened in Florence 1.0 back hundreds of years ago. People flocked to Florence because of the florin, because of the most perfect money of that time. And people will flock to El Salvador. They are starting to flock to El Salvador. And all of those headlines are wrong. And you know that they're wrong because there are so many headlines. So they're writing about it because President Bukele is a Bitcoiner. He's a Bitcoin maximalist. He has laser eyes. He is laser eyes. He's the embodiment of laser eyes. He is Lorenzo the Great of our day. And they're afraid of him because here's a $30 billion economy. And yet this 20-something trillion economy of the United States is passing laws to investigate how El Salvador might jeopardize their economy, the US economy. Well, yeah, if your economy is based on fraud, well, a perfect economy based on perfect money and true liberty and true Enlightenment ideals, because remember, the United States was a republic when it was founded, and it was founded on an Enlightenment document called the US Constitution, which was based on a limited government, which was protecting the rights to life, liberty, and, they called it pursuit of happiness, but property. So that's what we used to have. And, people forget, maybe because of all the bread and circuses and the free money and all the writing off of student loans and stuff like that. But if El Salvador and President Bukele introduces what we used to be when we became great, when we were great, that could blow apart their entire delusional myth and their fiat fraud.
Absolutely. It's great. I forget who said this, right? One of my favorite features of Bitcoin is that it exposes people's incentives. And I think it was Max that said this. The tyrants come out of the woodwork, and they expose themselves. Max, same question to you. Why is the legacy propaganda media so hell-bent on attempting to attack El Salvador, this tiny country in Central America that wasn't even relevant before they passed this Bitcoin law?
Right. Well, it's a sad state of affairs for journalism, really. I mean, going back to what we said at the beginning about inflation, the mainstream media was warning about deflation for years, and the mainstream media didn't think all that money printing would have any consequences. And the inflation genie's out of the bottle. They said it was transitory. And all as a chorus, they've been pushing pro Wall Street propaganda, and we saw all the propaganda pushed on behalf of the mRNA stuff, that's turned out to be massive psyops. And so now you've got the same machinery in place in lockstep without a single dissenting voice in American mainstream media, pushing the same talking points concerning El Salvador. And well, one phrase in particular stands out from what you just read, and that would be dismantling democracy. So the reason this is patently false and demonstrably false is that the president of El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender, and in so doing gave 7 million Salvadorans the right to unconfiscatable, uncensorable wealth and property. Now, this is decentralization, democracy. Okay, this is the complete opposite of the claim of dismantling this democracy. It reveals that the notion of democracy in the American press is no longer consistent with that as expressed in the Constitution and the founding documents of the U.S. The U.S., the phrase the quote that you're talking about that I said was that Bitcoin is a mirror that exposes people in a way. If you're a bad person, it exposes you to be a worse person. If you're a good person, it tends to show you in even a better light. Michael Saylor was an unknown CEO, and Bitcoin made him into a Bitcoin legend. The founder of the BSV project was already on shaky grounds in terms of mental stability, and Bitcoin turned him into a full-fledged psychopath. Right, so that's the power of Bitcoin. It's a force multiplier. So it's revealing the fact that the press in America is sadly in a sad state where the truth is seen as the enemy of the state. And when you're talking about money that separates for the first time money from the state, well, the state's going to not like that. And so all media in America is state-sponsored media. Rolling Stone is state-sponsored media. CNN, state-sponsored media. There is no independent, non-state-sponsored media, with very, very, very few exceptions. I can think of only maybe one journalist who's flirting with challenging the empire on Fox. But other than that, you just have essentially the deplatforming that goes on. And it's also from El Salvador, you get to see the United States with a bit of perspective. And it's a bit sad to see a once great nation become insecure and fumble so horribly with concepts like freedom. They've completely lost the plot in the US, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, man, Tucker's awesome. And that's exactly why they sent him a subpoena the other day. Anyways, so one thing, and again, I immigrated here. I'm originally from Venezuela, and it's very sad seeing the US going this direction. It's hilarious that they call El Salvador a dictatorship. I don't recall the government, Nayib Bukele, raiding the home of the former president or arresting some of the members of the previous administration, whether it's Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon, et cetera, right? So yeah, it's disgusting, and it's extremely sad to me because I was the original vision of America that I was sold. I'm seeing it degrade before my eyes, but I do see hope in Bitcoin, and I think that's what keeps some hope alive, I guess. But I am in Puerto Rico anyways. Okay. So, Max, question here, and this kind of concerned me a little bit, right? Let me pull it up. Here is a passage from this article by Bloomberg. It says the IMF has held off on approving a $1.3 billion program for the country, citing risks from Bitcoin. And they also did something the IMF did something similar with Argentina. They dangled those SDR shitcoins on top of them, and they said that they would only do it if the Argentinian government discouraged crypto usage. So does the IMF worry you? If the IMF is clearly hostile towards Bitcoin, right? It's clearly hostile towards Salvador adopting Bitcoin. Why is Salvador in this position where they have to negotiate with the IMF in the first place?
Okay, a couple of points. As you've seen recently, the president of El Salvador has now put forward a program to buy back their sovereign debt in the open market. So they are reducing their debt. The IMF loan, as I suggested to the president a few months ago, which he made a public acknowledgement of, and is now following up on, is to pay off the IMF debt completely with the volcano bonds that are in the works. I think that the one major misconception about El Salvador's economic position versus the IMF and other creditors is that here in El Salvador, with the economy growing at over 10% a year, tourism exploding, forward investment incoming in the billions, all the other positive things that are going on, El Salvador literally has the ability to pick and choose when they want to do stuff. They'll take care of the IMF when it's convenient for El Salvador. So the IMF can squawk all they want. I know, little inside baseball here, that the IMF is scared shitless about El Salvador making Bitcoin legal tender. And they're constantly, almost every day, trying to weasel their way in and have the language changed on the law. And every single day, the president essentially gives them the finger and tells the IMF to fuck themselves. And then he uses, and many times he uses those exact phrases. So the IMF is a dead institution walking. And El Salvador can pick and choose the day and that they want to. And let me put it this way. The IMF has already died, but it's not yet buried. So, and El Salvador will pick the day to bury the IMF.
Amen to that. Speaking of dead institutions, I want to share this with you guys. This was a report by the United Nations released August 10th, 2022. It's funny because at the top it says prosperity for all. I just wanted to point that out. Anyway, it says the United Nations spells out actions to curb cryptocurrencies in developing countries. And at the bottom, they really say, I think, what regulation is for. It says ensure comprehensive financial regulation of cryptocurrencies through regulated crypto exchanges, digital wallets, and decentralized finance. Restrict advertisements related to cryptocurrencies. Provide a safe, reliable, and affordable public payment system adapted to the digital era. They're talking about central bank digital currencies. Agree and implement global tax coordination regarding cryptocurrency tax treatments. Redesign capital controls to take account of the decentralized, borderless, pseudonymous features of cryptocurrencies. So this question's to Stacy. Look at all these institutions that I think we saw differently for so many decades, whether that's the IMF, the World Bank, the United Nations. And again, it's what Max says, right? The Bitcoin is exposing their true incentives and the tyrants are coming out of the woodwork. What are your thoughts on that United Nations report, Stacy?
So first of all, it's important that all Bitcoiners realize that El Salvador is Bitcoin country. And as I said at the top of the show, President Bukele is laser eyes. He is Bitcoin. So we all have to be on the side of El Salvador in this fight, because what they are fighting is exactly what the World Economic Forum sort of mentality of all these people who run these institutions is. And that is that you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, right? That's what they say. This is what El Salvador has already experienced for the past 200 years. As I said, they've had the colonizers here. They've had the communists. They've had the cantillionaires. They've had the crooks, and they've got rid of them. What they're saying there, what the UN is saying there, what the CBDC and what they're trying to stop with the sanctions, why they want their CBDC, why they want their surveillance coin, is you can't have a system of money and sanctions like what the US has done over the past decade. They first pulled Iran off SWIFT, and now they're pulling everybody off SWIFT, and they're seizing reserves of Russia and other nations. They're talking about introducing sanctions on China. Well, there's no such thing as having money, and that, like, you can't have money. Has to be fungible, has to be able to be used by everybody. It has to be neutral, or else you have no money. So you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, is what their mentality is. That you'll have no real food, you'll have sludge. You'll have no real money, you'll have a CBDC. You'll have nothing that you own. You'll have no right to life, liberty, and property. Like, that's the future they see for you. And El Salvador is the single only country in the world, the only one that is Bitcoin only, that is Bitcoin country. They do not have any shitcoin policy, no cantillionaire policy, nothing at all. So, like, this is like the tip of the spear in this battle against what they want you to own nothing. They don't want you to have the right to life, liberty, and property. So that is the truth. And that's what the UN is saying, is they want a money that is not actually money. They want a fictional money. So, but then it's not money. As if you've read Nick Bhatia, of course, with Layered Money, there's been three monies in the world. There was gold, there was US treasuries, and now there's Bitcoin. Well, gold is all owned by the central banks, and it's, we all know the shortcomings of the difficulty of transporting through space. So the US treasuries, they blew it up themselves. We decided to destroy it, and because we didn't want to share. We didn't want other people to outcompete us. Well, it's too late now because we have Bitcoin. So this is the battle of the next decade, is right here in El Salvador.
Absolutely.
Right.
Go ahead, Max.
Well, the Bitcoin is designed to attract attacks. So the hash rate's at an all-time high. The more the IMF and the World Bank, these global institutions, talk about global tax and global enforcement of global CBDC, the higher the hash rate will go, and the higher the price will go. That's design, by design. So we want them to fall on their sword and commit fiaticide. I don't have any sympathy for them. When these guys ultimately blow themselves up, I'm not going to cry a tear. I'm not going to be, oh my God, he was such a noble person, but he decided to commit fiaticide. No, I'm going to be like, told you, bitch. right? So it attracts the tax. So we're now attracting the boss of the boss, the last group, which will bring hash rate up even higher. Price will keep going higher. And nation states will see what's happening in El Salvador. And it's a big advertisement for Bitcoin. They're doing our marketing for us.
Yeah.
So bring it. It's so fucking stupid. I feel sorry for them some days. Some days I just don't care. Sometimes I do feel a bit, sorry for them. But most of the time I'm just like, during the 20s, I don't want to go down this dark path. But that's all I'll say. That's all I'll say.
So this is the question that I was most looking forward to. And I actually retweeted this. It said, vote with your feet, move to El Salvador. Salvador's Bitcoin country. Marty Bent said, Bitcoiners need to stop trying to win the minds of the politicians at the federal level and focus on winning the minds of the people who are being subjugated by the federal government. So, Max and Stacy, could you pitch the audience on why they should move to El Salvador?
El Salvador is Bitcoin country. It is led by Lorenzo de Medici of our day. It is Renaissance 2.0. It is Enlightenment 2.0. The government gets the fuck out of your way if you're here to build, if you're here to just live like a Bitcoiner lives. There is no cantilever cups running the freaking government here. So in terms of Marty Bent, what he lives in America, he's an American, and Europeans and Americans have a different perspective on things because, they haven't had 200 years of blatant, violent, forcible colonization, crooks, cantillionaires confiscating their wealth and sovereignty for 200 years. El Salvador has. And now they have found a superpower. And their superpower is not only President Bukele, but that President Bukele is a Bitcoiner. And he sees it. Everybody here sees a response from allegedly the most mighty superpower and empire in the history of the universe of human beings, right? Well, why are they so fucking scared of us? Well, they're scared because President Bukele is Lorenzo de Medici of our day. Renaissance 2.0 is coming. El Salvador will be Florence 2.0. And we all know Florence 1.0 from today because it was so powerful, because it was so mighty. And it took humans out of the dark ages and brought us into a period of Renaissance and then Enlightenment and amazing things we created, discovery, architecture, art, all of that stuff. We flourished. Humans flourished. People flourished. Governments did not. And so this is a sort of period that will be set in motion. So I think this is the place to be. President Bukele says, El Salvador, we can make it where we are going is to the place we want to be. And that includes anybody who moves here, anybody who wants to build the place that you want to be, you want to see, you can do it here. And I know it. I know it for a fact because that's why we're fucking here. So shut the fuck up and move here, Marty.
Max?
Well, I think my recommendation would be don't try to time things perfectly. A lot of people going back to World War II, they didn't believe what was happening in Germany and they didn't leave and they regretted not leaving. A lot of people did leave, some famous people like Einstein and others. I think in the United States, you have to understand that we're going into a third world war. It's a continuation of the second, which is a continuation of the First World War. A lot of the same political forces are once again coming together for a war. And if you're caught in the crosshairs of that, you're going to get killed. So if you want to live, come to the savior, El Salvador. I think there's going to be such a madhouse at the airports because they're going to have plane loads of people coming in and they won't have the infrastructure to handle it. I would say don't come to El Salvador because I don't need the aggravation of having 5 million Americans, trying to rush get into El Salvador. It's going to be a pain in the ass. So maybe, but since you're a nice guy and I like you, I'll tell you the truth. But if I'm going to talk to Bloomberg or somebody else, I'll say don't come because I don't want those assholes here. I just want real people here. I want Bitcoiners. I don't want assholes.
Yeah. Oh man. Awesome. All right. It is time for the culture. Let's do this.
The Daily Culture.
Brought to you by SwanBitcoin.com. Swan is the best way to build your Bitcoin stack with automated Bitcoin savings plans and instant purchases, serving clients of any size from $10 to $10 million. We love Swan because they incentivize self-custody and dollar cost averaging. What are you waiting for? Visit SwanBitcoin.com today. All right, guys, before we get to the culture, I want to give a shout out to Pacific Bitcoin. November 10th through 11th, Los Angeles, California. Speaker list includes Corey Clipson, Lynn Alden, Jeff Booth, Dylan LeClaire, Eric Cosson, Mark Moss, Alex Kleinstein, Dr. Jeff Ross, Nico, and Opti are going to do a Simply Bitcoin from Pacific Bitcoin. You can take advantage of the promo code SIMPLY to get a discount to the largest Bitcoin conference on the West Coast. Opti, what do you have for us today, brother?
Well, first off, how could you not be hopeful after that segment? That was just pure signal there. But before I get into the daily culture, I say it all the time on the show, and we cover this all the time. And Max said it perfectly in this tweet. You don't change Bitcoin. Bitcoin changes you. And in the news segment, they even covered what I believe to be true as well, that Bitcoin exposes you to you. And there's a certain aspect of Bitcoin that expands your consciousness. And I love how you guys put this in your Orange Pill podcast. You guys always use the psychedelic meme of full dose, microdosing, and overdosing on the orange pill. And I found this meme as well, or the next one is you guys put it really well, because as someone that has traveled the dimensions of my mind, I can agree that Bitcoin may be a better psychedelic than psychedelics. And you put it here, psilocybin mushrooms are no match for the mind-expanding properties of the Orange Pill podcast, or the orange pill in general. But I really love how you put this tweet together right here, Max. And you go, Bitcoin takes you through 5 steps of consciousness raising by design. The path leads you from lowly gambling to spiritual enlightenment. And 99% of discussion still is on number 1. Number 1 being gambling, number 2 being investing, 3 being wealth preservation, 4 political activism, and 5 spiritual enlightenment. And you guys touched on it in the beginning, how Bitcoin will usher in the next renaissance, the next enlightenment. So my question to start off with is, how did you guys come to this realization yourself? Is it just going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, or is it just something that happens to you over time, that you come to this realization that Bitcoin changes your consciousness for the better?
Well, I think in my case, it's always been a lifelong pursuit to explore the unconscious and subconscious realms, probably because I was born in 1960 and grew up during the 60s when Dr. Timothy Leary and others were talking about the properties of psychedelics. And a lot of the writers at that time, famous writers at that time, were talking about psychedelia. The music was exploring psychedelia. So I think that's part of my childhood. And even when I started on Wall Street in the 1980s, it was a time actually on Wall Street when it was transitioning from many decades of being a very boring job with fixed commissions to suddenly Charles Schwab came around and they had the discounters appeared, and Wall Street got really creative with, and it was the rise of the leveraged buyouts, the buyout kings, Michael Milken, and all kinds of interesting. And that was one of my first job coming out of college was as a stockbroker, and I was exposed to just this idea that money was a medium, like paint, dance, song, the written word. Money is a medium. The medium of exchange is not different than the medium of artistic expression. Whether it's paint or dance or poetry, it's a medium. And that medium can take an infinite form. So, and I had a career on Wall Street with that kind of mentality. And I had a book of clients who actually kind of appreciated my take on that, believe it or not. So when I went on to the 90s and I created the Hollywood Stock Exchange and I invented a digital currency that's patented. And that was an attempt to turn everything that was in Hollywood into a tradable meme, a virtual security. So that was eventually sold to Cantor Fitzgerald. Then I discovered Bitcoin in 2011, and this was the discovery of all of these ideas expressed perfectly. So the concision of the white paper is the genius of the white paper. There's nothing new in Bitcoin. It's just an assembly of existing technologies, but in a perfect way. So in this way, it's almost like a haiku. You know, haiku is a very short poem. It's 3 lines, very limited number of syllables, but it resonates. It's perfect to a degree. With Bitcoin, it's the perfection of money and the medium of exchange as a medium perfected. So it tickles the psychedelic need that I think all humans have at some level of their sub or unconscious existence. There is a psychedelic thirst for radical juxtaposition of ideas and images to create new truths. So truth, again, is subjective. This is the thing that journalists face all the time, is that the journalist tells the truth today, but tomorrow that truth may have changed. You can only tell the truth as it exists today, but there needs to be an effort to at least tell the truth as you see it today. The failure with journalism that we talked about earlier is that they go in there with a cooked story already and then bend the facts to go with the narrative. Same thing with Wall Street. You know, the problem with my technology, the virtual specialist technology, it really is a way to pick a price first and then add the trades later. And you see that on Wall Street now, and part of the problems on Wall Street is that the markets have been subjected to this form of manipulation where big banks like Goldman Sachs, they want the bond market to be a certain price, so they start printing trades at that price and then fill in the orders to support their preconceived notion of what the price should be. So it's the opposite of price discovery, where the price is the sum total of all the buyers and sellers in the market, and you have the current price. That doesn't exist anymore in any market in the world. All markets everywhere are the opposite. The price is determined first based on a narrative, and then trades are filled in afterward to justify that price. Now we're seeing that completely being unwound. It was supported by artificially cheap money, 0% interest rates, allowed you to do this perpetual fraud for many, many years. We've now entered a new era where prices for stuff are not going to be determined by this fraud on Wall Street, but by the people who produce the stuff. The commodity producers have now taken over in pricing stuff. And that's why suddenly stuff costs more, because for decades, the price of stuff was hidden by derivatives, by Wall Street, by financialization, and all the risk was shuffled around and it was dumped in places where it was never talked about. But now that era is over, and we have a new era where the price of stuff is determined outside of America. It's determined where they produce the stuff, the commodities. So that's a very disjointed and long answer to your question about psychedelia. So I hope that the psychedelic nature of my answer reflects the spirit of which the question was posed.
I also want to say that's one good thing about being older than a lot of young people now entering Bitcoin is that Max and I have some memory. Max has more experience of the real, of when you talk about CBDCs and surveillance, we lived in a time where you could actually be a private human being, where you could express yourself, and it was essentially in privacy. It was not surveyed and recorded and put in your files for the rest of eternity, right? So when you're in the 70s, think about where Max grew up in New York City, what was going on, right? You had the Weather Underground bombing, like 2,000 federal buildings in the late 1960s, early 70s. Like shit was going on. Yeah, you had Times Square looking like Taxi Driver or that TV series The Deuce, and there were pimps and whores and sex shops. There were serial killers all over New York. There was murder, but there was also punk rock, and there was hip hop, and there was, the beat poets still there. Like you had an incredible cauldron of creativity. And we don't have that anymore, right? Because everybody self-censors. And if they don't, they get deplatformed. So they aren't even part of the conversation and they're disappeared from humanity. Because the right to assembly, but also the right to privacy are part of these Enlightenment ideals, and for a reason, because that's where you cultivate creativity and innovation and ideas. And, part of that process is not, you make a lot of mistakes. That's part of growth. That's part of creativity, is fucking up and making mistakes. But there's a lot of young Zoomers and millennials don't have that option because everything is recorded for eternity in some digital space or some server in the NSA and Google and Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, and the part of the American entrepreneur, the American archetype is somebody who gets up after having been knocked down, right? And actually, there's a great analogy to be made in the game of baseball, which is a uniquely American game, but I'm not going to go digress into my whole baseball analogy. But nevertheless, other parts of the world, particularly in Europe, if you make a mistake, you're stigmatized and your career is cut off and you're a loser. In the United States, we encourage mistakes. We say make as many mistakes as you want, because every mistake gets you closer to winning, right? And that means you can't have censorship imposed the way that it's being imposed now, and to create the fear of mistakes as you do now. And this generation, the millennials and the Gen Z, they're being taught to fear making mistakes, which is the worst thing you could possibly do to any generation, because now they're going to become snitches.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Well, that's what in the psychedelic movement back in the 60s and 70s, it was about dropping out, right? Of that 50s and 60s sort of culture. And you might have seen in Mad Men some of the collision point there. And the horrible thing about it is that the boomers were the ones that did this. They were teenagers or young 20s at the time. They were the ones doing this. They were the ones blowing up federal buildings. Now they're the ones like deplatforming people and introducing CBDCs and telling you that you'll be happy if you own nothing. It's like they're the tyrants. They became all that they were dropping out to avoid. So it's just a new form of it. It's a new digital form of it. But they were coming out of the era of McCarthy and all the wars going on around the world, the Cold War and the proxy wars, like in places like Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia and all across Central America, of course. And so, they were dropping out. They were like exiting that system. Well, Bitcoin is exiting that system. It is exiting the man, right? Like it's sticking it to the man in the same way that the 60s attempted to do, but then they all started doing butter commercials and selling out themselves.
Gary Rubin was part of the Weather Underground, I think, or one of the major counterculture movements of the 60s. He became an investment banker, right? So a lot of that time, and it was, there was a brief period of self-expression and freedom, and then it became corporatized. The youth movement, became owned by corporations.
You used to be able to blow up a federal building and just go back to your day job or, drop out and just go to a concert. Now it's all like big deal.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but,
I'm just joking. Don't
Stacy's just
hoping that
having a little humor there.
Get in trouble.
Some very interesting humor. But it's culturally speaking, Bitcoin is the acid of this century. Instead of dropping acid, you can just stack sats, and it's similar because it takes you to a place of enlightenment that you were trying to get to with acid or psychedelic drugs or mushrooms,
yes,
or music. That place you're trying to get to, you can get to by stacking sats, because the aesthetic beauty of Bitcoin is transformative. Once you study the protocol and how the incentives are all perfectly balanced and how this is perfect money and how everything else around it is falling apart because of its presence, you have a consciousness raising experience, which is beyond what Dr. Timothy Leary could have ever imagined on his most trippy LSD trip. This is Dr. Leary to the power of Dr. Leary.
But, a lot of people have bad trips, and some people lose their minds on Bitcoin too. And we've,
Bitcoin derangement syndrome.
Bitcoin derangement syndrome. We've seen people look into Bitcoin, see Bitcoin, understand Bitcoin, and then they get a God complex and blow their minds.
Well, this happened in the early years, but some of the early OGs flipped out, like a Charlie Shrem, for example, or a Roger Ver, who we knew in the very early years of Bitcoin. When you talk to them, their eyes would be spinning like pinwheels. If you look at the protocol for the first time, and you're one of the first people to look at it, really, sincerely, it'll literally blow your mind. And in some place, and if you're not prepared for it, it can blow your mind literally.
But there were a few trip sitters back then. It was a small community of Bitcoiners back then. So now we have more trip sitters, right? And that's an important part of tripping. Actually, I've never tripped other than on Bitcoin. I've never done it. But from what I understand by reading about it, is that you need a trip sitter before you take any of these, like ayahuasca and things like that. So that's part of the journey. And I just take Bitcoin. I snort it every morning on swanbitcoin.com, by the way.
Well, it gets to the point where any psychedelic drug, it needs to be incorporated into some kind of ritual and community experience. Doing anything like this alone is always risky, and it's not recommended. And same thing with Bitcoin. That's why the community is so important. You need to be part of the Bitcoin community to help you avoid becoming strung out on Bitcoin and ending in the gutter. When people start selling their chairs to buy Bitcoin, you know that they've got a problem.
They're totally hit enlightenment. They're like up there.
I envision Michael Saylor at people's homes, looking under the cushions of their sofas and dimes to buy more Bitcoin. He's a Bitcoin junkie. That guy. He needs to go to Bitcoin rehab.
No, he's gonna hit nirvana. He's literally going to evaporate one day on air. Hopefully it's on your live stream.
Yeah.
But
he'll dematerialize.
He'll just turn into
Exactly. He will dematerialize and enter Satoshi consciousness live on somebody's podcast. That's probably going to happen in the next 6 or 12 months. Man. This guy is so far down the rabbit hole that he met himself coming back.
In the rabbit hole.
Amazing.
Opti, that was the best culture segment we've ever had.
I have more prepared, but that was perfect. I just want to add, I say it all the time that Bitcoin is fulfilling the meme of tune in, turn on, and instead of dropped out, it's just opting out and finally giving us those tools to cement this into reality. It's no longer just a meme. We have the tools to actually do this and further spread this to, as you guys said, Enlightenment 2.0 or Renaissance 2.0. And like you guys saying, you don't need to do the psychedelics to get the experience of Bitcoin. You just need to stack sats and provide value to your fellow man, and the effects will ripple out into society. And it's just such a beautiful thing to be a part of. Nico, I do have more, but I know we're on a time limit, so go to the memes or...
Let's go to the meme review, and we have a special guest. Let's check it out.
The Daily Meme Review.
Brought to you by Bitbox 2 Bitcoin Only Edition, a hardware wallet by Shift Crypto. Crypto-like cryptography. It's secure, it's open source, and it's so easy your mom can set it up. Self-custody is the revolution, and the Bitbox makes it simple. Do not leave your Bitcoin on an exchange. Order a Bitbox today. Amazing.
Yellow.
Amazing.
How'd you get in here, Yellow?
What?
Oh my god! Oh my god! I want that. Oh.
I got plucky. I got plucky. I got my pink hat, my Satoshi Nirvana T-shirt, and I came in. What's the problem?
Oh, nice. There he is.
All right.
Did you snort any sats?
Of course. Yeah,
every day.
All right, guys. Well, you already know the deal. Tweets are the bullets and memes are the artillery in this information warfare. So continue to make the memes, continue to stay on the front lines and push the sound money gospel. And of course, guys, before we finish the meme review, make sure you drop your meme scores so that we can read them live. First and foremost, let's get into the memes. We got our first one by our friend Hodl, Never Soddle, and he goes, "We did it. We time traveled, but to what year? Let me ask that guy over there, which party controls the government?" And this guy goes, "What's the government?" And they go, "Doesn't matter. We're staying here." Yes, this is the vibe. This is kind of what they're saying down there in El Salvador, Bitcoin country. And of course, I had to add Yellow's meme this morning on here, and he goes, "Good morning, everyone. Yellow called a friend today with advice. You should do it, okay?" And we got Yellow. "Hello. Yes, hello, friend. Buy Bitcoin. Buy Bitcoin again? Yes, buy Bitcoin. Thank you, friend. Didn't think of that. Okay, bye. Bye. This is the way. Continue to stack Bitcoin. Continue to shill it to your friends and even to your enemies, guys. The world needs Bitcoin." Anyways, next one is by our friend Hodl Bear, and he goes, "Hard cap, no cap, 3 rules. No wishing for death, no falling in love, and no bringing back dead people." And the guy goes, "I wish for 22 million Bitcoin." He goes, "Well, now there's 4 rules. 21 million hard cap. This is the way." And on the news of Joe Byron and the really bad economy, we got this one of Wall Street exploding and Joe Byron doing that incredible speech with that very fascist symbolism. And this next one, I found a meme on Max Keiser's page, and I thought it fitting, and you even touched on it in the news section. And he go, "Maxim of the day. It's an unintended consequence of the failing to allow markets to function as they had for tens of thousands of years. When you put a central bank in there that changes the cost of money every 5 minutes, you end up with a planet that's completely out of balance." As a report 2015. So been on it forever. And on that same note, we added this Voltaire quote right here, and it goes, "It is difficult to free fools from the chain they revere." This is the way, guys. We are out here spreading the sound money gospel. It is a dirty job, but someone has to do it. And we got the high priest and high priestess of Bitcoin with us today. And I just love it. This is the energy that I always try to push out there, that Bitcoin is saving humanity, and it's upon us to spread that sound money gospel. Anyways, my meme review score today is these awesome honey badger stickers that I got from my friend BitMeg. Shouts out to you, Meg. Anyways, Nico, what's your score for today?
Yep, before I give it a score, guys, this is Simply Bitcoin Live. Drop a meme review score in the live chat. Give it anything you want, and make Opti and I feel uncomfortable while we read
Nico.
it.
Nico's the only one that feels uncomfortable.
Dude, you got very uncomfortable on the Saturday show, my friend. All right, anyways, I haven't given this yet. The Fiat Standard by Saifedean. That's my score. Just had it on my desk because I think I'm going to make a video on it. Anyways, Max and Stacy, what would you give those memes?
I would give them this score, right? Yay, Bukele 2024, Dios, Union, Libertad, and Bitcoin. Yeah.
Max?
Well, it's great to see Voltaire in the meme section. Clearly an OG. And of course, the Voltaire also said that every paper money returns to its intrinsic value of 0. So Voltaire is the godfather of memers, apparently. You know, he's really on the mark with these things. So I give Voltaire a very highest possible score on this. What did they get? 5 stars? The 5 Satoshis?
You make it up. You're supposed to, like, I use my hat. That's how cool.
The meme score is a meme in itself.
I give them. I give it a Malacca, 2.5 Malacca.
Let's go.
Yellow. What would you give those memes?
I'm gonna make it rain sats.
Ooh.
Those were good memes.
Very, very nice.
All right,
very nice.
We got a few meme scores already in, Nico. So
yeah, let's do it. First by Rave Elevator. I give the memes an S9 hashboard pissing off my neighbor. Yeah, keep pissing him off. Love that noise. I give those memes a one-way ticket to the land of the savior. Very nice, very nice.
Did the person wanting to piss off their neighbor with an S9, hopefully their neighbor is like Jerome Powell or something.
Oh, maybe it's Christine.
Whoever Jerome Powell's neighbor is, they need to get a whole bunch of Bitcoin miners and start rearing them up.
I got something for Max. Max, if this person's neighbor was Christine Lagarde, what would Christine Lagarde say to shut up that S9?
It feels like a NODL spiel, like a reunion show.
Oh, man.
I love it.
Okay. BTC Pin says, I rate the memes some torn up fiat. Oof. Very, very fitting. Very fitting. Opti, we have time for 2 more. I give 3 arepas and 2 pupusas. Oh, Stacy and I had a fight the other day. I'm a little bit biased. I'm going to go with arepas.
I can only endorse pupusas. I am a pupusa ambassador. That's not yet been announced, but President Bukele is making me the official ambassador of the pupusa.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, Opti, there was this open source software release today. Let's check it out.
Bitcoin software release.
Brought to you by CipherSafe. Don't be that person that loses their Bitcoin seed due to fire damage, water damage, dog attacks. Back up your generational Bitcoin wealth on steel. And there's no better place to do it than the Cypher Grid by CipherSafe. And now check out their new Bitcoin art, the Bitcoin Rulux triangle, only on cyphersafe.io. I totally did not pronounce that correctly, but I tried.
All right, guys, for today's software release, we got LDK Rust Lightning version 0.0.111 released, and it's got a bunch of API updates, guys. Check it out. And of course, listen to us on Spotify, on Google, Anchor, and if you love what we're doing over here, we are on Fountain, and you can stream us some sats. We appreciate all you guys. Thank you, Max and Stacy. This has been a great episode. Pure signal, pure sauce on this one. Anyways, Nico, let's roll this one out.
Before we do that, I want to give a special shout out to our clothing sponsor, RepresentLTD.com. Opti and I wear the hoodies every single day. Opti, show the back. Show the back. You're wearing the orange pill, man. Look at that. Decentralized. Beautiful. You can take advantage of the promo code down below to get 10% off. RepresentLTD.com. Also want to give a very special shout out to our awesome guests, Max, Stacy. Thank you so much for coming on Simply Bitcoin.
Come to El Salvador.
Absolutely. What are you guys working on? Where can people find you? I'll say it myself. This is usually what I ask the guests, but everyone knows who you are anyways. Check out the Max and Stacy report. I want to give us also a very special shout out to the Keiser report. Clearly, it was a major inspiration for Simply Bitcoin. Really appreciate you guys coming on the show.
Oh, thank you. And again, El Salvador is Bitcoin country. Come visit. You can find us. We're like, the greeters, the official greeters of El Salvador. And we're working on a lot of great projects here related to Bitcoin and El Salvador, and including at El Zonte Capital. So you could follow us on Twitter at El Zonte Capital. And
there's going to be a new 200-foot mural at the airport with my face on it saying, "Welcome to El Salvador."
Yeah.
And with the Bitcoin country.
Is it? It's a project in Open Sats, right? Like we are holding it.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can see it as you fly in. So as you fly in from about 8,000 feet in the air, you can see my face.
And in fact, Yellow, you can donate sats in order to make it's because it's a digital billboard. You can hide his legs. Like if you don't want to see his legs, no. Okay, I'll give you some sats. Hide his legs.
I hear it.
Could you put in parentheses except Christine Lagarde and Augustin Carson?
Well, we have a special welcome for them if they choose to appear.
It's a kind of different Mirano.
Yeah, we have something very special planned for them.
Anyways,
I know you guys met up with Sean Harris, so I'm gonna definitely be seeing you on the party, the halving party. The tall guy.
Yes. We met up with the
Sean Harris.
We met up with Big Sean
and
some of the Labra. We met Labra. I've seen Labra with my own 2 eyes.
People are still talking about Big Sean here, in San Salvador. They're like, "Wow, that guy is impressive." And he left. They're waiting for the halving party now. The entire country is like, "This party is going to be lit." That guy, Big Sean Harris, is the dude. So let's get it on.
None of them had micro penne.
No
micro penne.
penne.
And They were not intimidated by Max's legs, so very confident guys. You know,
which is rare.
Exactly.
Anyways, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. Yellow, thank you for crashing the show. I'm going to put you backstage for a bit. Anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Simply Bitcoin. If you like the content, make sure to hit that like button. If you really like the content, subscribe. And what YouTube likes the most is share the freaking video.